Hey, Amy,
Yeah, Juan.
give me that beat.
It's Baseball Shangri-La with Amy Cuevas and Juan Ramirez.
What's up, party people? She is Amy Cuevas. I am Juan Ramirez. You are listening, watching Baseball Shangri-La. If you are listening on the audio portion of this program, please make sure you're subscribed to our podcast. You can rate us, write us a review. Make sure you spread the news, let everybody know about the show. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. Hit that notification button, get the thumbs up, leave us comments. We love engaging with you guys. And most importantly, make sure you're following us on social media. On X at BB Shangri-La, on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch at Baseball Shangri-La. Amy, ¿cómo estás? I'm laughing because I think I blew out your eardrums, right? Because I'm so
a little
loud.
bit. Do you see the blood?
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's what was making me laugh. It's just I obviously swallowed a megaphone as a young child and just never let people know.
Well, I appreciate you apologizing. And then you said the something about the news, and all I could think of in my head to like counteract the pain was start spreading the news. Like,
I'm leaving today. I want to be a part of it.
My ears are already bleeding. We don't want to hurt anybody else's.
Well, the Dodgers are in New York, New York.
I didn't even set that up. Wow, that was happenstance.
That's right. At the time that we are recording this, the Dodgers are still playing the Metropolitans. So we are going to recap that series. We'll do in-depth analysis on that series on our next episode.
More in-depth analysis than we did on our last episode.
Yes, I know.
One needed a venting session.
I just don't know how do we analyze when someone doesn't hit. I mean, the whole team didn't hit. I don't know what else. I'm just going to tell you guys, like, so-and-so didn't hit. So-and-so didn't hit. Like, I don't know what, I didn't know what to do with that episode, Amy.
Well, clearly we've started off in more of a celebratory manner. And since this is our ump show, Angel Hernandez will be kicking us off. And then we have other umpire-related stories, but he's retiring. As of the recording of this show today, by the time you guys hear this, it will have been 24 hours later. So I don't know if you guys will still be celebrating.
Look, I am in the minority on this. I have to say this, Amy. The way you said it, we're in a celebratory mode because Angel Hernandez retired. I kind of feel bad for him. The way everyone has been reacting to his retirement. You know, we all know that my Dodger friend groups are the most positive people in the world. So when I shared this with them and said, guys, I kind of feel bad that, the way people are reacting to this story. Do you want to know what I got? Here's the response that I got from Big Sexy. That's our nickname for him. I said, guys, I kind of feel sad for him the way everyone is celebrating his retirement. 2-word answer. What do you think the answer was, Amy?
F him.
That's right. That's right. That's what Big Sexy said. F him. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, then it's like that.
Well, to be fair, he has had kind of a checkered call past. And I think that's where people, these are games where if you listen to our last episode and just the emotion in it, that's just from the players.
I am not emotional. I am not emotional just because I'm a man.
Okay. All right. Are you going through menopause here?
I see what you did there. I see what you did. Hey, 2 shows nightly at the Pacoima Hilton, everybody.
I think we're not even taking into account bad calls from umpires, and those can sway games. We're going to get into some of the other calls that have been a little bit more egregious. We've also covered some of the Aaron Boone call recently with, I think it was Wendelstadt. I'm not excited that he's retired. I'm happy that the bad calls will come to an end because, as most people know, Joe West and Angel Hernandez were 2 of the biggest, I guess, people that had grievances with them. I mean, you've even mentioned that your wife knows who Angel Hernandez is as a non-baseball follower.
Yeah, and she is not an avid I mean, she cringes whenever the baseball game is on in the living room, but she knows who he is.
Well, and I guess what it comes down to me is, one, it's the calls, but two, it's even just the lawsuit that he filed. I feel like it's already a hard enough time when people are bringing in like race discrimination stuff. But he filed a lawsuit, basically saying that he was passed over for like World Series crew chief positions because of his race. And if you look at his track record, I don't know necessarily that it can be tied to race more than the calls that he's making. If you make calls like that on the biggest stage in the biggest classic, like, that's not okay. And so the fact that this went through the court system, I just feel like that gives a bad rap to the people who legitimately have like racial discrimination cases out there. So while I am not actively, like, I don't have balloons or party poppers or anything, I am happy that there is a resolution to him making calls 6 inches off the plate, consistently egregious calls behind the plate or at, first, second, third base.
Angel Hernandez is Cuban American, and yes, Cubans may speak Spanish very quickly and cut off half the words, and I may not understand them, but I don't think that has anything to do with the ability of calling strikes or, making calling outs. The thing to me, though, and it's about the whole timing of this, Amy, because there was an article in The Athletic that came out like 2 days before. It was Bob Nightingale who went with that Angel Hernandez was going to be retiring. Did you see that story in The Athletic on Angel Hernandez?
I'm not sure, because I think I sent you the Nightingale. I'm not at this point. I think we have so many texts going back and forth. I don't even know.
Well, I mean, there was a story that came out in The Athletic on Angel Hernandez, and it wasn't anything new. There wasn't anything groundbreaking.
Yes, it was Sam Blum and Cody Stavenhagen or Hagen saying, is he a lightning rod umpire? Does he deserve his villainous reputation?
Exactly. I don't think they were breaking new ground with that story. They weren't telling us anything that we didn't already know. But the fact that story came out on Friday and then 2 days later, and I didn't realize that he hadn't umpired a game since May 9th.
Were you going to say Mayo?
Yeah, I'm a book smart. I'm a book smart.
And he was out last year for a back injury, so he only called 10 games. But in those 10 games he called, he had 161 missed calls, according to umpire auditor.
But here's the thing. To me, and I'll pose this question to you, Amy, because you are a positive person. You are a much better person than I am. Does this feel like this was a forced retirement?
Well, that's what it says, that they've been negotiating actually the last 2 weeks of a final settlement. So they reached a resolution over the weekend. Part of that might have been a forced retirement. We'll probably never know unless he speaks out and says it. I guess I'm just looking even at some of the games on the face. Umpires are human. They're going to make mistakes. That's going to happen. But when we see like 3 calls in a row, 6 inches off the plate, there's something wrong with that view of the plate at that point. Like, we're clearly missing something. And because these are games that to me, they matter in May, they matter in September, you can't have somebody who controls the game like that making calls.
I am surprised by this, though. I will say this, because I do believe that the Major League Baseball Players Union is the strongest union, I think, in America. It's got a pretty strong union as well, is the Major League Baseball umpires. That union is pretty strong. So for them to allow this to happen, I mean, dare I say it, is this actually some accountability? Are we holding some of these apart? Because in this episode, we're going to go over some other egregious moments in umpiring this year. But for me, it just feels that finally, Major League Baseball decided to do something about this guy and been like, you're not good at your job, and held him accountable. I also don't think, what's the name of that account on Twitter? That's is it Umpire Scorecards?
Mm-hmm.
when you look at it, you sit there and it's like, okay, well, he only missed 5 calls in the game, right? And I don't know what the percentage would end up being. And then when you look at it, you go, but there were like 300 calls. So if you have 300 calls and you only miss 5, that's pretty good.
It's not bad in some cases, but when maybe those 5 are egregious ones, like I know people keep coming back to that game with the 6 inches off the plate. That's the one I go to. Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, has been posting his greatest moments. So it's not just behind the plate. Sometimes it's at first base that he's had to have plays reviewed, taken a look at again. So they're not going to get it right every single time. Luckily, we have a review for some cases, but some plays are not reviewable, and those are game changers.
And member of the Hall of Fame of the Ump Show, Joe West came out and actually, what did good old Cowboy Joe have to say about Angel Hernandez?
Hold on. He said, whether you want to believe it or not, he was good at it.
Look, it's the age-old, you shouldn't know an umpire's name. If you know an umpire's name, then that means something bad happened in it. One of the things I have noticed, and I don't know if you've noticed this this season, it seems like there's a lot more young umpires. And maybe that's why I don't know who they are. I've never heard of their names, or maybe it's just because they're good. If they're good, you probably shouldn't know anything about them, right?
Well, they are saying, I think there was an article we were referring to, I think the last time we touched on this, was that the younger umpires are more familiar with a lot of the rule changes and then the way that the game is shaping up. So they're able to adjust more on the fly, where some of the older umpires are maybe not quite so adaptable in that respect. So you're not seeing as much finger pointing in those cases. But I don't know, because some of the guys that in the stories we're about to talk about with the Marlins and the Tigers and the White Sox, some of those guys were younger guys.
All right. So before we get into those stories, last thing I want to say about Angel Hernandez, as I said, he did paint a bit of a sympathetic figure for me just because I felt like everybody was piling on. The guy was an umpire for 30 years. And I do want to be fair in this sense, where his job is hard, and it's also got to be really hard to know that robot umpires are right around the corner. You're going to be replaced, not completely, but umpiring, who knows how long it's going to take, but umpiring in the future is going to change because of the robots, right? So I do want to give him a little bit of grace.
Skynet.
I just, God, exactly right. Where's Sarah Connor when we need her, or John?
Miles Dyson, darn you, Miles Dyson.
I mean, the issue at hand is this, and that is, I get it. He was bad, but do we need? And look, this is the approach I expected you to take, because you're the sensitive one. You're the one that's all about human and being good. Like I like. Do we need to pile on the guy? The guy, he's out. He's leaving.
I don't think we need to pile on. I think for me, where I started to hear more about him, yeah, he made egregious calls. So did Joe West. When I was first reteaching myself about baseball, those were the first 2 that I heard a lot about. I think for me, what sticks in my craw is the racial discrimination lawsuit. Like, to me, it, if you don't have the numbers to back it up, and odds are that's probably why you got passed over. Again, like I don't want to be a broken record, but even the court system was saying that he failed to establish a significantly statistically significant disparity between the promotion rates. So at that point, did you get passed over because of your skill set and where you are, or was it really racially motivated? The courts are saying no, but public opinion is he's not a great umpire. Did he make a lot of good calls over time? Absolutely. He, like you said, he's been in the game since 1991. Like, kudos to him. And it can't be easy to be somebody who everybody knows your name in the game. There was one.
I like what you did there. I see what you did there.
What did I do? I didn't do it on purpose.
Where everybody knows your name.
No, we are not having a cheers moment.
Okay, then.
I think it was John Boy. Somebody, one of the younger fans, as Angel was walking out of a game, asked for his autograph. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool.
Well, did you see the one where he gave him a baseball? I don't know if it was that same video.
I don't know.
But
This kid threw down a baseball and a pen, so he signed it and then tossed him back up.
I saw a video where he was giving a kid a baseball, and look, I get it. We don't see enough of that stuff. All we see is the horrible calls. All we see is the players going after him. It is. I mean, the guy was an umpire for 30 years, and yes,
he had a childhood dream of umpiring in the MLB. I don't have that dream. So at least he got to realize his dream. And now he said he's decided to spend more time with family. So
yeah, I just in the end for me, we know he wasn't a good umpire. He's no longer going to be an umpire. It's an accomplishment, 30 years for him. It's just, that's how social media is. But there's another story. Do you want to go to can we go to the Marlins one? Because
yes.
you mentioned John Boy, and I think John Boy did a really good job of laying this out.
Yes, because I think we had an article we were looking at, but I ended up going back to the John Boy reenactment. And so this happened on May 14th. It was a game, the Marlins versus the Tigers. And so basically the Marlins manager, Skip Schumacher, he briefly got tossed. And then eventually I guess the umpire Ben May reversed the ruling. But he was out briefly for a minute. And what happened was they didn't like the strike zone. They were chirping a little bit in the Marlins dugout, and the umpire stopped, told them, "Hey, stop yelling." And the bench coach ended up walking by, clapping multiple times and saying, "Break it up, break it up." That's where the confusion started. Did you want to add anything to that, or?
No, to me, the thing is this is it seemed if it really happened the way. So I don't know if you guys have seen these videos that John Boy does where he basically reads lips.
So Skip came in after basically umpire Ben May came in and ejected somebody. Skip Schumacher comes out and says who, and the umpire says whoever said that's low. And so the Skip was basically like, you don't even know who you tossed. How do you not know who you tossed? And the umpire says, any position player, whoever you want, which is problematic right there. And then the second umpire, Dan, comes in and says, you got to send somebody down, pick anyone who said something. If it was me, I'd probably pick the bench coach, but somebody's got to go, basically backing up the home plate umpire. And so at this point, if you guys are watching the video, if you can find it later, you see all the players in the dugout and some of the coaches basically, like, it looks like a skit where they're all pointing at each other. Me, you, me. It's like the Scarecrow in Wizard of Oz. And so as they're all pointing at each other, the umpire and Skip continue to go at it. And it's basically like, you're just going to have to pick somebody. Somebody has to go. Skip yells, or, you basically, somebody has to wear it. They're questioning each other. But the concern is the umpire didn't know who got ejected. And the fact that they're having to pick somebody like that, there's a little bit of an issue there with, if you're ejecting somebody, you should have a little bit more control on it.
Yeah. Do we know for a fact that that's what was said? Do we know if Skip Schumacher spoke about it after the game, about the ejection, confirmed any of this stuff? Because I know that, like I said, I'm not sitting here saying that John Boy is lying, but he has these videos where he's basically lip reading, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like this is what they're saying. But do we have any confirmation from Skip saying, yeah, the umpire said, yeah, I have to choose somebody? Because I agree with you. It's an extremely bad look for an umpire to do that, to eject someone from the game and then say, not tell you who he ejected from the game. And you got to pull a freaking Sophie's Choice over here and be like, okay, someone's got to go, so.
I mean, they didn't say it in the one article I found. I think the one that I was looking for was just trying to find the date, because that's what we were like how long ago did this happen? So
And again, and this isn't the first time we've seen something like this, going back to what happened with Aaron Boone and the Yankees, where it was a fan who said something and the umpire ended up throwing Aaron Boone out of the game. There is something going on with umpiring this year, or maybe it's just the fact that this could be one or two, events that happen, occurrences that happen, and we're blowing it out of proportion and sitting here and saying this is happening too much.
These are the
But
exceptions to the rule, and because of social media, we're just seeing it more, which could
because
very well be the case.
They're going viral, but it does seem like, for me, look, I'm not a fan of umpires. I would never do that job. I think that job is very, very difficult. And it's really because, they hear it every game. They hear it all day long. Like, just like NBA players, they never foul. It could be, how many times have we been watching a game and we see that it's clearly a strike? It's clearly a strike in the strike zone, but the hitter's like, no, that wasn't a strike, right? And they argue and they go off on the umpire. It does seem like, for me, the training should be, as an umpire, is avoid confrontation. Let them say whatever they walk away.
Mm-hmm.
Don't initiate confrontation. It seems in some cases it looks like umpires are initiating that confrontation. And of course, players and managers are reacting to that. I also think part of it is, it's like, are they worried about, robot umps coming around? Is that what's got everyone on edge? Like, at this point, it's like, what's happening? It does seem like there has just been some odd umpiring this season.
It just seems that the fuse is a lot shorter than it used to be.
Yeah.
Where, to your point, like, people are gonna jaw no matter what. So, like, let them say, if they're saying it on the way back, whatever. If they're gonna jaw from the dugout, I guess I'd be curious, like, how much do you accept on a normal basis? How much did we accept prior to this? There's going to be people complaining, especially when your strike zone does not feel accurate. And from what we could see from the video, it didn't look like, it was questionable at that point. So you have people who are going to voice their concern. If you told them to quiet down, I think we take for granted that we're not in that fast-paced situation. We're all looking at this from hindsight. So it's a lot easier to look back, even if you have a John Boy video potentially voicing what could or could not have happened. We all get to see this play out, even in slow motion, after the fact. When they're in the moment and you just hear people jawing and you maybe want to stop something from getting more and more out of control, you're doing that. You can't really hear what's going on. You think you made the call and you didn't. So, in fairness to the umpires, there's a lot going on in the game, and they have to also stay focused on what's going on and prevent people from clearing the benches if things do get out of control.
Yeah, I just, to your point, it's just not a good look. And I want to stress this by, you are not allowed to argue balls and strikes. You're not allowed to do that. I don't know if they're getting instructions from the league, if they're getting instructions from the Umpires Association. Hey, make sure you enforce this. You are not allowed to argue balls and strikes. I think it's a rule. If, as a manager, if you come out of the dugout to argue balls and strikes, it's an automatic ejection, because you're just not. Oh boy, go ahead and.
No,
for those
I'm
of you,
I'm gonna need time to peruse through my major league.
for those of you who aren't watching, if you're not watching the YouTube, Amy just brought out her rule book because she's a nerd alert. She's a nerd. Nerd alert.
It's, you act like I've never I've tried to say that that's not the truth.
Yeah, it does feel, because the thing is also, Amy, that happened in the first inning.
That also happened with Aaron Boone right out of the gate. So, like, are they trying to curtail stuff, cut it off before it even happens? Is that maybe what the potential is? Or are the calls just, it feels like, becoming more and more egregious? Because there was that article that we were looking at, I think it was in The Athletic, that Aaron Judge, followed by Mookie Betts, they're in the 400s, the mid 400s of bad calls being called against them. And it's really hard as a player to hit as it is. But if I don't know what the strike zone is at any given moment because you keep changing it, that's also not fair. I am going to be upset because I've already got the fans on my back. I've got my team on my back that I'm trying to help move forward. And if I can't judge what this strike zone is accurately, like that's problematic. And again, we've got humans in here. And I think that's where, we're going to get to what Rob Manfred has said about the automatic balls and strike system or the robot umps. But I think there's just some compromises that we can come through that take the umps off the hook and then also give the players just like the ability to breathe as well. We'll get into that in a minute, but to your point, it's not a good look. Even with the Marlins and Tigers game, that's just calling balls and strikes. The White Sox game that happened, I think it was last week, was a little different.
The White Sox and the Orioles. Let us know what happened in that situation.
So so they were in I don't know if it was the top of the ninth or the bottom, but basically Baltimore was leading 8-6.
It was the bottom of the ninth.
Was it the bottom of the ninth? So they were leading 8-6 over the White Sox. As the White Sox hitter, Benintendi, he popped out at the plate. The Orioles player, Henderson, made the catch at shortstop. Andrew Vaughn was on second, and they called, instead of calling the infield fly rule for an out, they called interference and ended the game, saying that Vaughn on second interfered with the Orioles' Henderson's ability at shortstop to catch the ball. The challenge is Vaughn never saw Henderson. He was either on second base and then like trying to go back because the infield fly rule was going to be in effect. And Henderson from the Orioles, he was behind him. So Vaughn never got to see him, but he also came around him and still made the catch for the infield fly rule for that automatic out. But Adrian Johnson, the crew chief, they said that Vaughn was out at second for obstructing, and they called the game. Because it was they had 2 on, 2 out. They had first and second, and that ended the game.
I want to give credit to the White Sox color analyst, Steve Stone there, because he did a good job of describing the fact that Benintendi's back was to Henderson. So to your point,
Andrew Vaughn. Benintendi was at the plate.
Oh, okay. The runner's back was to Henderson. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't see him. He didn't actively get in his way. Yes, Henderson did have to move a little bit to avoid him, but I to me, that play, I know I've seen some people say that was the right call, but I don't know, because the runner was in the base paths. He has a right to be in the base paths. Henderson was coming into the base pad
and was still able to make the catch. I think the argument could be made if he couldn't make the catch, but he made it.
And that's what I'm saying. To me, if you're going to enforce that, and I think this is also part of the problem, and this is why I would like to know if the Umpires Association or Major League Baseball has made it a point. I know with this rule they want to make sure at the beginning of the season, back in spring training, they made it clear that they wanted them to enforce the obstruction rule. So when you have umpires specifically looking for this now and trying, it almost feels like cops giving out speeding tickets and that they have a quota. I have to give this many tickets this month.
But it doesn't feel like this was like running in the bases, because the rule was to prevent injury on the base path. This isn't an injury. This was like a slow motion play of, oh, it's going to be caught. Let me go back to second base. I don't see you behind me. Oh, so you're going to go around me and then make the catch. And the next day, MLB reached out to the White Sox and they said that the interference call to end the game should not have been made. Well, that's great, but are we going to get to go back and play it? And could we potentially win now? Like, because they had 2 on. They had the go ahead run at the plate with Benintendi, or
No, I mean, you're absolutely right in that situation. It does seem almost worse that Major League Baseball came back and said, hey, you know what? It was the wrong call. But for me, the only ways you make that call is if it was egregious or if it was obvious. Like if you have A-Rod karate chopping the first baseman, that's when you call it. For them to call it on a play like that,
I'm
that had no.
imagining them doing that. That's great.
I just, for them to call it on that, I didn't understand it. And it's not like you did it. It's like the bottom of the ninth inning. That's when you decide you're going to make that call. Like I said, you only make that call if it is obvious that the runner or made contact with the fielder. But in that situation, Henderson is coming in. So it's like he's the one initiating the contact. If there was, but there wasn't any contact. So again, I don't think there was enough for them to make that call.
Well, and at the end of the day, I guess, because I'm looking at the scoreboard on it, if it's 2 on 2 out, whether it's the infield fly rule or we're calling interference, I mean, doesn't the game end anyway? Am I missing something?
There was two. You said there was 2 out. I thought it was 1 out, and it ended up being a double play.
Maybe I don't. Maybe I'm looking. Maybe they. Oh no, it was 2 on 1 out. I'm seeing it as it changed because the scorekeeper put it as the second out. So as I'm looking at the playback, they have it as the second out before the umpire ended it. So my
yeah, because it was a double play.
2 on 1 out.
It was a double play, and that's why the White Sox play-by-play announcer was losing his mind, saying there's no way the game ends on this kind of double play.
Yeah,
because you're right, infield fly rule, and then at the same time,
then you get the
you're
next
going to call
batter up.
interference.
Yeah,
that you call interference, and that's how the game ends.
and the commentators were audibly upset by this. Like, I believe terrible call was thrown around a couple times.
Oh yeah, they were quite upset. But look, I know we spent a lot of time on umpires in this episode, but I don't think umpiring is perfect. I think we're always going to find issues. What I find really interesting is that they do finally end up going with an electronic strike zone, because in the minor leagues, I know earlier Rob Manfred said that it's still not ready. In the minor leagues, they don't use it all the time, right?
There hasn't been enough progress yet for them to bring the umps up. So they're still having some of those technical issues of where the ball crosses the plate. So the midpoint of the plate is, is it 8.5 inches from the front and 8.5 from the back? How do they account for, I'm shorter than you are. So how do we get the system to recognize that? And so they don't have that in play yet. What some of the articles that I was reading was saying was basically the growing consensus from players is just bring a challenge system. That way you have the best of both worlds. And that's something that I've been arguing since last year is we don't need to get rid of umpires. I like the human side of the game. In fairness to the umps, I like having them in the game. I know it sounds like we're coming down on them. These are just some moments that have happened, but I really do like having that human aspect of the game. I love seeing them out there. In this respect, though, if you have a challenge system where they don't get to be God on certain calls, I think that's the happy medium. You take the pressure off the umpires, you give the players and the teams a little bit more power back to be able to challenge, but you also give them a certain number. Like, we're not doing this all game, guys. Just like you only get 4 mound visits now, you get 4, maybe 6, whatever, depending on how many calls we're finding. If they're doing the stats on that, okay, this is how many you get within a game. These are the ones you can challenge.
No, I get that, but to a certain extent, and I don't know if this has been talked about enough. I do think if they eventually go to that electronic strike zone, if they go to a challenge system, it's going to be a little bit of opening up Pandora's box, because I don't know what the impact is going to be on this. If you look back, there are certain pitchers that I think became Hall of Famers because umpires had generous strike zones. And the best example that I can give you is Tom Glavine. And that's because Tom Glavine has even said this himself. He kept throwing outside, and he kept pushing it to see how much of the outside of the plate the umpire would give him. So if he threw it outside, the umpire called it a strike. The next pitch, he threw it even further outside to see what the umpire would give him. If you go to an electronic strike zone, you're not going to have that anymore. So
but that's where I don't think we don't need to go that far into the electronic strike zone. Your point was
But I'm curious as how that's going to impact pitchers because, like I said, Tom Glavine made a career from pitching outside. Everybody knew he was going to go outside, right? But it was how much the umpire was willing to give him. If that's taken away from pitchers, it's going to make it a lot harder because pitchers now basically have to, I'm not saying they have to throw it down the middle, but they're going to get more of the plate than they were getting before. And these hitters are just so good. Well, depending on who you ask, it's not the Dodgers this week, but for the most part, major league hitters will hit mistakes, and they will hit mistakes very far.
But that's baseball. That's like to your point. There was a point in the article in the Associated Press where that came into play for catchers as well. That they're saying that framing is part of the game. There is an art to that, and if you take away certain aspects of that, what he said that the catching position becomes more of an offensive player, and that alters people's careers. So those are legitimate concerns, and they need to think all the way through. That's why they're not going to bring it into effect in 2025. I truly just don't think we need to go so far as having that robotic strike zone for every play. I think if you can give everybody, okay, you get 4 challenges. If you hit that last one, if the umpire keeps making mistakes, kind of like what they're doing right now, then you don't lose a challenge. If there's egregious plays, heck, give them 3. I don't care. But if they're continuing to make bad calls, then you continue to not lose a challenge in that respect. And then you can go on playing. But if you've got a player that's being a little bit of a diva and you're like, that's outside, and the ump's calling it true, then there's no more argument there. It takes the onus off of the umpire from having to be the bad guy. And it's like, no, he made the right call. Sit down. Or, if you've struck out at that point, or, hey, get back in the box and let's keep this going.
Look, this was not the first time, nor do I think it's going to be the last time that we are going to be talking about umpires this season. I do want to end the show with this. There are a couple of stories that I forgot to bring up in terms of umpires. And I don't know if this was in a Major League Baseball game or if it was in a minor league baseball game. Do you remember the story about the umpire who threw out the guy who played Three Blind Mice?
Yes, that was a long time ago.
Was that a minor league game or was that a Major League Baseball game?
I think it might have been a major league, but that was a while. That was grainy TV times.
Yeah, so you have that. So umpires, I think, are always going to be a little sensitive. But do you know the story with DJ Severe and Joe West and Justin Turner?
Why don't you tell us the story?
You've never heard this story before?
It was a minor league game, and it was in 2012.
Wow, that's grainy time for you? I'm sorry, we all can't be as young as you.
Well, it was whoever posted the video posted a grainy video on YouTube, so blame it on the poster.
All right, I'll leave you guys with this DJ Severe story. Severe told me this story, and it cracks me up. So you know that Joe West, who is in the Hall of Fame for the Ump Show, he put out a CD, like country music. He had an album.
Okay.
Did you not know this?
I did not.
So he had an album, and Justin Turner got a hold of it, and so the Dodger Joe West is behind the home plate. And Justin Turner gives the CD to Severe before the game starts and tells Justin Turner to tell Severe play his songs in between innings. So Severe does it, right? Now Severe's he's a little nervous because he's like, should I do this? But if Justin Turner's telling you to do something, right, you're gonna do it, right? And this is Justin Turner's way of fucking with Joe West. So in between innings, first inning, Severe does it. Joe West gets a little bit of a chuckle out of it. Second inning, Severe does it again. Does it again in the third inning, and then Joe West kicks Severe out of the game for that.
Oh man, I did not know that story.
So yeah, look, umpires. The rule of the story is umpires are, they're human. They don't want to be fucked with. They're a
necessary part of the game.
Yeah, they're a necessary part of the game, and they get a lot of shit.
And
get a
they have
lot
a hard job. Have you seen some of those balls that get hit out by first, any of the bases? Even the guy who's like standing out between like second, kind of in the back, like you've got to be head on a swivel because some of those line drives that come through, the
Yeah.
movement these guys have, amazing.
Yeah, I think you have to give some of these guys grace because I mean, if you need to slow it down super slow-mo to be able to make a call, then I don't think it's fair that you expect the umpire to get that call right. But at the same time, when there's egregious stuff going on, like these examples that we talked about, there is a level of accountability. The players have accountability. The umpires, who you say, and rightly so, are an important part of the game. I think there has to be that level. So maybe this Angel Hernandez thing it's the beginning of holding these umpires accountable. My concern is it's going to be a lot of these older umpires, these umpires that have been around for a really long time. And if you're setting precedent with you're forcing Angel Hernandez to retire,
We
what are
don't
some of the
know. We don't
what
know for sure.
we don't, but that I'm curious now what happens if you start seeing some other umpires. Are they going to start feeling like, oh, you guys are trying to force me out?
Well,
It's just something.
that's something for them to take up with their union, and that's an individual basis type of thing.
Absolutely. So that's going to do it for this episode. Amy, any last words before we wrap things up?
Thank you to our umpires.
That's right. Even though we shit on you this whole episode, thank you. Thank you for being a friend.
Thank you for being.
There we go. There we go. You took the bait. You totally took the bait.
It, you got me with the Golden Girls.
I set you up for it. All right. So for those of you listening on the audio portion of the program, please make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. Rate us, write us a review, help spread the word. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. Hit that notification button. Give us a thumbs up. Leave us comments. Let us know what you guys think. Am I being, for me being the Prince of Darkness, it seems like I took it easy on the umpires. So where do you guys land on this umpire thing? Also, make sure you're following us on social media. On X at BB Shangri-La, on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch at Baseball Shangri-La. She is Amy Cuevas. I am Juan Ramirez. You have been listening or watching Baseball Shangri-La. Nos despedimos con un beso. Amy, say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye, people.